Good afternoon. Do I need, I'm okay, right? So I believe I have to use this mic. Let me start, by looking at the attendance, which is quite very great. It reminded me the second or the third forum when we start talking about decentralization. So I wonder today what's to have this turnout. I want to start from the maybe 2 weeks ago from the GC, the Governing Council. I honestly believe that I need to express once again all my gratitude and my appreciation to all of us for this collective effort. Obviously, previous years were also great in terms of GC, but this one particularly has a special touch with the presence of the Pope. All of you that have worked to make that happen, really appreciate it. Plus, also the first time that we were kind of delocalizing the GC to FAO, which also came with its own challenges. And I honestly believe it went quite very well. I hope we will have the SEC and the other colleagues have already started looking at the lesson learned for next year, whether next year will be in Rome or Delhi. This is a different debate per se, but already learning, getting the lesson learned. So that for me has been quite very successful. What also came out very successful, and I was quite very humbled, is the substantive discussion. Not only the parallel sessions, but I believe it's not always obvious to have the plenary. I'm not talking only the parallel event, but having the plenary discussing key issues about IFAD future for me has been quite very telling, and I really want to express appreciation to all of you. And obviously, when you talk about the future of IFAD, it brings down to where we are and where we're coming from, where we are, and where we're going. I've been struggling. On one hand, I have 20 minutes. Is that 20 minutes, right? So I've been 18 now. I've been struggling if we need to really take a lot of time to also talk about where we're going or where we stand with the reform. But the more I think about it, the more I believe it will be important to have a specific interact. One day you need to explain to me the difference between interact and the forum. We need to have a special interact for the reform, where we stand, where we're going. Briefly, what I want to say at this stage, I was at the PDMT retreat about 2 weeks ago, and I was telling the colleagues that when I take a step back, one of the things that I believe I didn't do very well is to continue explaining to all of you what is at least my personal assessment of where if I stand, i.e., business as usual is not the way forward. And I'm so convinced, that one from day one, I'm so convinced that if we were to continue business as usual like 2-3 years ago or 5 years ago, I don't know if IFAD will last 10 years, 15 years. I was even asked by, and I'm very thankful to that member state, I will not mention the name, I was being asked by quite a very senior official of an important top 3 cumulative contributor, a question that why don't we roll over IFAD into a World Bank department instead of continuing giving you money as a standalone? Obviously, I do have an argument. You can count on me that I like the debate. I do have an argument to face that. But the simple fact that the question is being asked, but such an important donor tells you, I was grateful because he had, is a he, so you can say. I was grateful because he had the the courage, if I may say so, to put it bluntly. And the question is, how many of them are thinking the same, but not asking it? This is why I keep saying that it's better for us, ourselves, to transform ourselves before we are forced to do it. And it's always very difficult to transform where, on the short term, you don't see that there's a need to transform. That's the challenge I have. I've been in other organizations where the need was there. Everybody quickly understands that we better do it on that. So that was my basic starting block point. Where we are going is very simple. I really need more impact, I believe, more impact for us on the ground. What does that mean? In one word, IFAD need to grow. IFAD need to, that's what is my objective. The end thing, I want IFAD to grow and hopefully to double as soon as possible our capacity to what we're doing. If we want to grow at a point where ODA is stagnating, apart from the 2008 food crisis, which has helped IFAD 8 or 9 to raise, you can see that our core contribution actually is stagnating. So you want to grow, or you have to grow at a time where ODA is not necessarily growing, while you really want to make sure that you maintain your core mandate, because there's no shift, no drift in your mandate as on your mission, as we hear that all over again. So how do we do that? We need to look at the different ways, which is the market borrowing, or which is the leverage, which is what I call now IFAD 2.0, and I'll quickly come back on that. So for me, if I want to grow, if we want IFAD to grow, we need first to demonstrate that the trust vis-a-vis those that can help us to grow. We need to demonstrate that, okay, we can play I'm not a bigger football fan, in a division, the first division, not the second one. Yeah, I'm trying on that. Liga something, a Premier League in your case. Instead of having been on that deuxième division, you know, this is the first thing. So what does that mean? We want to be closer. Today I was in APIA, and from the field they were telling me how they are much more demand on the non-borrowing, activities. You want to show that, okay, you count more. We know our relevance, our comparative advantages. We want to use that much more. We want to make sure that both the IFI side or the UN side, they know our capacity and they refer to us. That's why we want to be able to show that, okay, we talk about efficiency, we can be efficient. The reform on the whole process of budget, the project approval, or the decentralization, or the disbursement approval, or all those things for me is on one global pie when I want to show that we are capable. We're not just going to ask you to give us money. You know very well, nobody's going to give money because you have beautiful eyes. We really need to go and demonstrate that, this is what we are capable of. That's what we have been doing actually in 2017 and 18. Now, and I believe we have done it quite very well, and we are doing it quite very well. Let's be very frank, and I'm very thankful to that. Now, we start doing that second, the second part of the match, the second 45 minutes. In terms of going and looking at ways to increase our resource base. That's why we're talking about market borrowing, we talk about credit rating, we talk about new windows per se. So that, we are doing the preparatory work now. The key thing is going to be next year during the IFAD 12. So, it's so complex, the issues are so big issues that you can't just wait January 2020 to start dealing with that. Your replenishment will be gone before you get an answer. So We have been working on that almost at least 9 months on those issues. Meanwhile, the big first part that I'm talking about, we have to stabilize it. That's what I'm saying, that 2019 is a year of consolidation while we are thinking. So that second part is nothing that will affect staff or will affect movement of staff per se. It might require new skills that we don't have inside, just like when we talk about the risk and the risk-related skills that we don't have, the compliance side. So when we talk about IFAD 12, IFAD 2.0, it's very important not to see that as the type of reform that we went through on the first big segment. And in between those two is the year of transition, the year of consolidation. I want to say that. Why? Because for me, it's important to start, and I believe I'll come back to that maybe 3 weeks from now or whatever is possible to set up a specific interact for us to deepen in those things. I just kind of trying to give you the summary thing. And to be able to be where we are today, and I already start seeing the retombée, the dividend of what you have been doing in the past 18 months or so. But that, of course, has been a bumpy road, or almost a feeder road as you finance in our activities. It's a way for me to tell you that when comes the time for us to decide to do the GSS, in September, October, it was discussed at least once or twice in EMC. And a lot of, there was a school of thought by saying, how can you be in those big reforms where staff are frustrated, where staff don't want to go to the field, all those things, and you launch, you're just going to be grilled by staff that they will be expressing. That's no. It's important anyway for us to hear from you, to really have opportunity for staff to express themselves. And secondly, who knows, there might be other issues that we are not even aware of. So it's not all the issues that you should put on behalf of the reform. The reform itself has maybe some issues, but you can also have issues that has nothing to do. So the very first thing, I'm saying all of that to tell you that I heard you very loudly and clearly. The message from the GSS was quite very, very clear. Yes, there was part of it that was not surprising to me, to be honest. On the flip side, there were some elements that I was surprised that I didn't know of. As generic issues across departments, and I didn't know how deep some of those issues were. And there were also some divisions where I didn't know that they were peculiar in terms of dissatisfaction. So all of that was important. Now, for me, I've been also told by a lot of colleagues that the staff, including EXA, I believe now is ISA, right? The Bureau for the Staff Association, that the staff were disappointed by the committees that were set up in the past. And if we were to do the same thing, it would not go well. So I've been thinking that, okay, we shouldn't therefore doing that. And I think we need to be forward-looking, looking at how we want to do, and what will be the solutions. That's the bottom line. One thing that, and I'm very careful about the word that I'm using, one of the things that will be very easy for me to turn around is, I mean, there was one question, to what extent you trust that senior management will act on this. That one is the easiest part for me, because I'm glad it was not too good, so it's easier to change it, because I know we will act. So what I decided to do, I've been struggling, and I've always quite been very transparent with you. Either we find a way, which are not committees, but we find ways where the solution comes from bottom up, or we management start with the president, also make proposals. The risk, I make proposal, you might think that, okay, we are imposing solutions. So what's the balance between those two approaches? What has led me to ask through the AVPs ask the divisions to meet with the staff, and also when they have ideas to feedback to OPV. And most of you, I think, have done that. Yesterday, in my meeting with EXA, I was told that there may be some division where staff may have not seen their divisional result. I want to believe that by now is not the case. If it's the case, I want to urge every division director to make sure that they share the divisional results with the staff, please. Sustain parentheses. So I got a lot of feedback through the AVPs. We got a lot of feedback. And myself also, I've been thinking some ideas. Quite frankly, I can give you an example of things that I've been thinking even before the staff survey, is the whole promotion frustration, lack thereof, I should say, type of thing. So I decided to put all of that in some possible ideas, which I would like a colleague to just project that. Then let's go forward what we plan to do. It is very simple. While we're doing that, it's important for me to preface by saying that those are ideas that I would like you to look at them with a critical eyes. Some of them are coming from EMC, some of them are coming from myself, some of them are coming from the initial reaction we got from the divisions. So the first one is under the leadership. In a nutshell, in addition to I can read from here. In addition for the president to be much more present at the cafeteria, what we are talking about here, I'm saying that this vision, making sure that we are all on the same wavelength, I think is going to be important. First of all, as I say, maybe in the next 2-3 weeks, we can have a special session on that. There are two sides we need to do. Broaden what I said earlier, and also tell you where we stand. There's a confusion between OPEX, CDI type of thing. When OPEX, which is finished by December 31st, gracias. And where what CDI is meant for. So we can organize a special session on that maybe in the 2-3 weeks to come. What's more important, I feel that maybe every quarter, every 3 months, we come back with this type of session so we can see where we are in our roadmap. I was also thinking that, you know, that like tomorrow, every Friday, I have this director's coffee, 9 to 10. That concept, I want to have it, instead of going by level, like have it may not be Wednesday, because Wednesday we have cabinet meeting. Every Tuesday or Thursday or Monday, we have the same. It can be 9 to 10 or whatever. I will ask OPV to look into that, where we go with one division at a time. And it can be the president with the EMC members that are in town, having that coffee, no specific agenda item, meeting with one division at a time. So that's what I'm calling about, replicate the concept of weekly stand-up coffee. I was being informed as well that ISA is planning to also organize some kind of a coffee where they can invite some of the one or several senior managers at a time, which I also believe is a very good idea. I also think that we want to waiting for a proposal from ISA how we can step up ISA participation in the recruitment processes, because this is a domain where I've seen that there's a lot of suspicion, which is not surprising, quite frankly. It doesn't matter how you do it, there will always be suspicion. But to me, if we can step up the ISA participation in the recruitment process, it will also help. It may not alleviate 100% of the problem, but it will help. Then, based on one of the feedback that I got, since what is left over in terms of OPEX, what I call the surgical reassignment, the one-time thing we're doing, what is left over is ERG and HR. maybe I believe a few cases in RIA, I think. But essentially, we talk and FSU, maybe to be safe, let me say ERG and CSD to be safe on that. So since we're going to have the cases in HR itself, apparently some staff are really questioning if it will be, how do you say that, if there will be no conflict of interest. So I'm open, since the chair of the reassignment, she comes from outside, we need to find something similar to make sure that HR is detached totally with that process. I have absolutely no problem. In terms of workload and life balance, here I have to say that to me, the work-life balance issue is there. It has been there for a long time, but still there. But in the last 2 years, the workload itself has increased. And the one that is speaking is the first responsible for that because of the and I want to be very clear on that. That the workload has increased and therefore makes it more difficult even for staff to take advantage of the work-life balance parameters that we have. So somehow the proposal here is to address specifically the workload and some of the work-life balances. And I was shocked when I believe it. I went to HR retreat and then PDMT retreat. And what comes out of that, you know, I believe it was Nigel on behalf of the whole team with his, I don't know which English, but was simply saying that if, oh, you here? I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Simply saying that if we can start by filling all vacant posts, it will be a way to start. Because there are so many vacant posts that if you can start by filling that, which I believe is a very good point. So this is what the very first thing we want to do, that is making sure that the filling of the vacant post. The business process, again here, please do not take the business process review. That should start in the next 2-3 months. Do not take that as another thing of disrupting your thing. The whole point is, can we identify things that we can stop doing or we can do differently that will reduce the workload? This is really the whole objective that we're going to do under the business process review itself. Talking about that, what I will also appreciate, if at the division level, you can also meet within your division, asking yourself those 2 basic questions. What can we do at our level that maybe we don't need to do it, or we can stop, we can reduce the intensity of it, and feedback, CDI or OPV. You know that we have launched this pilot on a compensatory time off, and I was told yesterday or 2 days ago that so far 2 staff has made use of it. So if that is true, we really need to really encourage staff to look in at that. And that should also hopefully deal with another proposal is how do we compensate, find a way for staff to be compensated when they work over the weekends on that. So to me, all of that we can look at through the compensatory system, the pilot we have ongoing. The point number 5 here, when you talk about the teleworking, actually there is a typo there. It's not the teleworking, it's the work-life balance. Meaning that our whole setup in terms of work-life balance, it might be good to benchmark it with maybe 4 or 5 other agency IFI right now. Maybe there will be some lesson that we can learn. We can learn from that to beef up our existing policy on work-life balance. Obviously, it does include teleworking, but for me, it's not limited to teleworking. There was a proposal which I also welcome, is the whole idea about possible to make sure that there's I'm looking at Thomas, if we can make sure that email are not delivered to our inboxes after 1900 or whatever hundreds, and between 7 and 19. The proposal came from one division, which I believe we need to look at. But in my meeting today, when we say 1900, is not only Rome time. We also have to take into account the country offices. For the Pacific, for example, it might be like 12 instead of 19. Those type of things, I think we need to look at it. In addition to that, is almost a personal request. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you will recognize that. Right now, I believe Birgitta or Georgia who trained me on that. Using the desktop, you can program your email to defer the delivery. But from the cell phone, you cannot do that. And that is causing me problems, if you see what I mean. So it's something also that if we can look at that, I also really welcome this. There was a proposal which I believe we need also to look at is one day, I was thinking, I don't know why, I was thinking about Monday, like no meeting day. Unless you want to put it on Sunday. Maybe we need to, we need to look at that also seriously, that if we can try. A lot of those things, my point is that you need to try. If it doesn't work, you adjust on that, but you got to try. In terms of promotion and career development, first of all, I said in December that before summertime, we're going to have a promotion policy. And please, I can tell you that OHR has been quite frankly working on that, so I'm sure is to be safe that I say summer. I will not be surprised that they come with that before summer. And for me, promotion is not, right now I'm a G3 on a G3 post, and I'm looking for a way for my post to be upgraded to G4. For me, it's not what is the real promotion. The real promotion is when you get selected to a higher post. The real promotion is when you can expand your career span, that you also have opportunities in other departments, etc., that you are not cornered in one single department for a long time. But all of that, we will look at that promotion. And you know that over the last 18 months, with all those reassignments we have done, at least 50 staff currently have been put on a post higher than their level. And it is I believe I alluded to that in December. Maybe I was not clear, so I want to be clear. In my mind, we just finished or about to finish the PES. After 2 PES with a 3 rating or better, all those 50 should be promoted to that higher level post on that. This is what is, for me, it should be in the pipeline. The point number 3 is the staff exchange program. I asked Saeed to look at the numbers. What I would like to propose here is that on an annual basis, we can have 10 to 15 people that we can send to 6 months, maybe 9 months, if budgetary we can allow that on an exchange, not really exchange, because I'm not expecting necessarily somebody to come from the other hand. Let's say you can just decide that Mrs. Anna Blow can just go to Washington for 6 months or 9 months in X department, whether or not the World Bank is sending somebody here. As part of the career development, how to select that, all of that, obviously we need to look into that. To me, that will be a good opportunity in terms of career and development, staff development dimension, and which also means that when the person leaves, he or she has to be replaced temporarily. We need to build that into the budgetary dimension. The HRIPs, for all the chapters that you see, that they also holistically, I have to say here that Brigitte and Pierre has worked a lot on the chapter 2, and they were almost ready to issue a new one. But because of the linkage, the interdependency about issues on the chapter 2 with the other chapters, we decided that it's better to have a holistic review. So that also is something that, for me, is coming up between in the current year. Upcoming reassignment, I think we have one reassignment. The link to the reform is really one reassignment that is left. And one will have to build, because I know in December some of you were unhappy that you didn't have enough time, and it was a bit packed. So we need to build the lesson on that. The HR talent management to be more, to become much more our almost at the center this whole policy that we are talking about. I have to say that HR has made a presentation in December or November to the EMC on this. So this is going to be one of the deliverables also during the year. In terms of career development too, we have to think about our CPOs. And there was one idea or few ideas, positive one that I got through the retreat with the PDMT as well as my meeting today in APIA. And that is an idea that I believe should not be left at the region level, but across the house, is to offer opportunities to CPOs to also be engaged in activity outside the duty station, outside the country. That will also open up opportunities for them. And those opportunities, I have to say, I told to some colleagues, I believe it was in Ethiopia, I told staff that if we can provide you with staff with career opportunity, just for you to find a better position outside IFAD, I'm happy as well on perspective. So that is also an important point. I have the point number 9, I put it as a question. When you think about career development, and at one point you need to go through some kind of training, and I'm wondering if at one point we shouldn't make that, once we have agreed, of course you cannot impose that on staff based on discussion between staff and management or staff and supervisor. And if we have decided that, okay, I don't know, Rosanna has to go through economic 101, maybe that should be mandatory during the year, that if I had to make sure that we pay, and the supervisor had to make sure that the staff is released to be able to do carry out this activity. This is what I put that as a question for you to react as well on that. Mentorship program for young women. I was informed, and I have to confess myself, I didn't catch that while I was reviewing the GSS, that in this category of career development, the dissatisfaction was higher for the women staff than the men staff. And this idea came to the idea about having a mentorship program for young professional women. PES 2018. I was informed that there may have been some challenges in the selection of one of the 9 or 10 competencies need for improvement, and that maybe the staff are quite a bit unhappy about that. And I don't know if this is localized or a general feeling. I honestly do not know. But from my discussion, I believe yesterday, there is this proposal that staff are worried that by choosing that, then if they apply for other jobs, being IFAD or elsewhere, that can be retained against them, while it may be or not be necessarily untrue. So there's a big debate on that. So this is a bit complicated. However, I am prepared to try to find a solution on that. That solution will have to take into account the fact that we do have another problem. Let's at least recognize it. Last year, when we finished all the MRGs, all the PES, all 600 staff got 3 rating or better, which means in the whole house, there was no single staff member that needed improvement, essentially. So that tells you, let's face it, there is a problem. So on one hand, I don't want to kill the intention behind the idea about having to select 1 out of the 9, because there's a good intention there. Maybe the way it is being applied could cause problem. So I would like to hear from you on this, to be honest. So far, I'm prepared to open it somehow in a way, for example, instead of saying to the supervisor and the staff that you need to choose 1 out of 9, I hope the system, technical-wise, the system will allow this. I rather have 2 boxes. The first box will be, could the staff herself or himself say what's the area that he or she believe will need to improve in 2019 or 20. Second box will be none of the above. that I don't think that I need to improve something on that. So it has to be kind of voluntary for the staff to come with, because all of us, starting with the president, has something to improve on that. And during the year, instead of making it kind of, it's a forceful approach. So it's something to think about. The last point here is the legal support for staff. You know, one of the challenges, one of the problems, you look at the GSS, we have problem both managing underperformance, and we have problem in incentivize good performance. So we have to look at both sides. One of the things here that I'm saying here, I was told, and I was surprised, to be honest, I was told that there has been cases where managers have to even pay legal services from their own pocket to defend their cases because they have tried to deal, whether they were right or wrong is a different story. They were trying to handle this, which I believe is, if this is the case, is a little bit unfair. Then Isa also told me yesterday that in other institutions, the staff are also being helped financially for their cases. And I asked that also to be benchmarked with other institutions, and we can look at it in a fair way. So this is some of the few ideas that we decided to put together. And my plea is that the way I will see it is, out of this meeting, COM can post it as a blog, so you can react to that. You can react either directly responding to the blog, but the focal point on all of that will be HR. You can also write to your business partners on those, or if you feel that you need to go through your staff representation, also do that. So I would like HR, OPV, and ISA to collect all of those things, and 2 to 3 months from now, somewhere by end of May, we come with this same thing to tell you what will be the final decision and where we stand with the implementation of those plans, and we do that also every 3 months. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. Now, Gilbert has given us a lot of food for thought, and time is definitely not on our side this afternoon. In just a moment, I will open the floor for your questions. But first, let me just remind everyone that when we do open the floor for questions, we would ask you to please do state your name, and please try to keep your interventions brief. Now, while everyone thinks about any question or idea they may wish to put on the table, let me invite Lenyata, who has asked to say a few words on behalf of the staff in her role as the chair of the newly elected committee of the IFAD Staff Association. Lenyata, over to you.
It works. Good afternoon, everybody. And this is the first time I address everyone in my new role as chair of the executive committee. And I would like to thank the president for spending with us a lot of time yesterday discussing all the issues that staff faced, and really being open and frank to the ideas that we shared with him. So let me give you a little bit of the background. In the past week, we were trying to engage with staff and listen to everyone. We had a session on listening to you, and lots of staff attended and shared their comments. As well, we got lots of emails with good suggestions. We were really pleased to see staff are engaged. So we discussed with Pierre, we discussed with Stefan, and then we discussed with the president all the ideas that you shared. Some of them were very critical and sensitive. But I'm very pleased to see that most of our ideas were accepted, and thank you very much for that. Just a few remarks that 3 areas that we highlighted as important for IFAD staff. And before I say, I do I would like to recognize that management, in the context that we were last year, and we ourselves questioned, should we go ahead with that survey? And what would be the outcome? Many of us were frustrated. Things were not being the way they were before. So which was natural process of anxiety and frustration. And people were moving and families were moving. So in that whole context, management took the initiative and wanted to face the reality to see what's happening. And we have to recognize that. In that context, staff told us, we shared the concern. We shouted what the problems are. Now we are expecting management to come up with proposals. And as the president said, we can, of course, come up with proposals, but we would like also to hear staff, what staff think, and how we will ensure that there is consultation. Staff, on the other hand, said we already got involved in working groups. We came up with lots of suggestions, and those suggestions, we don't know what happened with them. So yesterday we discussed, and we as the executive committee stand ready to reopen all the suggestions, to look at them, to see what are the valid suggestions, and maybe to bring and discuss with the HR and OPV some of their suggestions to see if those can be addressed. But looking at the staff survey, there are 3 areas that we need really to consider. One is engagement. We have one of the highest engagement across the system. Loyal staff is an asset of the institution. And it's not just a vague the concept, loyal staff. It's higher productivity, it's less negligence, it's better image of the organization, so better results. And for that, I think there's something to recognize, and staff are saying we need a culture of recognition, we need rewards, we need to see what how to incentivize staff. So managers are asking, they need tools to provide incentives. But there are 2 other areas which are critical and need to be improved. And our president just mentioned the actions that management is putting forward to address them. There are 2 areas. One is trust in management. And it's confidence in management. It has been deteriorating, and there are reasons for that from the perception of staff. So in that context, we suggested, yes, some of the activities. The activity number 1. Let me go back. So we asked Mr. President to share the strategy and the vision, and this is what our OPV committed to do on a quarterly basis. So staff were questioning, saying, everything is a priority, everything is urgent. We don't know what's priority anymore. There is so much to do. So what we asked is we need a clear vision, we need a framework of changes, and then after the president announces that, then senior management and middle management will translate it into actions, timeframes, some results, so staff know when things are coming, what is expected from them. That clarity is needed from management. The second thing is communication, and lots of our ideas were on the screen already. So we asked our senior managers not be available for meetings, but be with staff, be in their presence, be together, listen to staff. There is a cry for being listened to. So, and that's why all this informal, and there is informal culture in this institution, that's why all these informal meetings over coffee are important, where we could discuss together issues of importance to staff. And we are putting, for example, today somebody addressed us saying we have issues about reassignment, wave 2, how it's going to be, who is going to be involved. And that's something, for example, we put together a group of 10, 12 people, and we invite senior managers to come and talk about this, a frank discussion. Whether we have answers or not, at least we make everyone aware that these are the issues. The third thing that staff said about management is accountability. staff feel sometimes managers should be more assertive, make decisions and be frank about that, and providing rationale for their decisions. So that's what expected, rather than going through processes and doing this and trying to see how we could do this or that. Just management decision, and staff said they are ready to accept it. The staff also said that maybe 360 for managers need to be reintroduced, so staff have a right to say what they think about their managers. The second area is HR issues, and most of them were already highlighted. Lots of career development and talent management and underperformance, recruitment, lots of issues, lots of ideas on we are waiting for promotion board and we are waiting for talent management framework, we are waiting for another reassignment. So there are lots of issues on how things will be done. One thing staff asks, let's be frank and clear, transparent. What are the criteria? How things will be done? Workload issues. Mr. President just said that we will reopen all the vacancies. We'll try to fill the positions the sooner the better. There will be a huge pressure on HR, I guess, and on us as representatives in each committee, and to make sure that the processes are fair and transparent. There were some suggestions that we need to learn on other recruitment models, maybe pilot them, how to do recruitment, how it is done in other institutions. We were told that WFP is using an external provider to ensure independence of that assessment. So there are different models. Two burning issues for staff now are PES, and I'm glad Mr. President opened that discussion. Staff are feeling that we need to re-engage and redesign PES, and I know that HRD is holding the first meeting next week to start looking at PES as a process. And then there are lots of issues about upcoming reassignments, staff are saying we would like to know more, to be ready, because it's not only issue for us, but also for our families, for those who will be moving. So they would like to know more criteria, lessons learned from phase one. So there is a lot of preparation to be done, and we need to look into all this. Having said that, the executive committee, and I'm speaking on behalf of 11 people, we committed ourselves to be involved in the entire process and to be supportive, provide support to management, work hand by hand in implementing all this action. And every time we will be facing some of the issues, we'll consult staff to make sure we fully represent your opinion. Whatever it is, we are ready to stand by it and voice it and discuss in a constructive discussion with the management. Let me stop here.
Thank you very much, Lenyata, for that substantive intervention. And
let me bother you for, I know we're rushing on time. Listen to Lenyata. There were 3 or 4 points where I believe it's important for me to come back to really, hopefully trying to make it clear. One is the confusion on the reassignment. You see, the reassignment, what I call surgical, one-time reassignment linked to the reform. Another thing is the reassignment exercise as a regular business, which we remember my first year it was very huge when I started with the mobility, et cetera, et cetera. So there are two different things. As related to the reform, what I call the OPEX dimension, normally is only one reassignment left, which will focus more essentially on ERG, HR, and I believe few leftovers. I don't recall leftover in terms of post rather than big division. That's what I'm using that term. English is not my first, my mother tongue, so I can defend myself on that. So a few posts that we want to add to that, and normally by beginning it should be launched by the first week of April, the latest on that. So what we are struggling right now, and I'm really be quite frank with you, what we are struggling, HR made a case a few days ago, and I believe they are right. Though I wanted to limit that to the reassignment, not to cause confusion. On the flip side, since we have so many posts that are vacant, the idea is to use that opportunity to integrate those posts so we can go faster on those posts, making sure that we don't have a lot of the backlog, to clear the backlog. But that should be launched and finished between now and June. And normally, most of those posts are HQ-based, so I don't want to create unnecessary anxiety on that. Now, we do have the normal mobility reassignment thing. What I can tell you, very first thing, I want to finish first with this one-time thing. Second thing, we need to, what was the expression used again? We need to make sure that the new, whatever, a typical example for me will be ADM. There are so new colleagues in ADM, for example, that they need time to settle. It's the same with the hub head, for example. They need time to settle. So we have to take that into account. And we need to have the feedback with the new settlement or resettlement in those things. Then, meanwhile, when posts become available, this is now, I'm getting to my new, I want to be pragmatic, my new reassignment thing. When new posts become vacant, you see, we want to make sure that instead of doing, right now, when you think about it, we can go both internal and external. So internal are competing against external. What we want to do is to give the first take to the internal. So by doing the reassignment with the post that becomes available, that will give the preference, obviously, for staff, either for lateral move or to be to compete for higher level posts. So I want to make sure that we clarify those two things. Then what I also believe is important. One thing that I struggle, and to be honest, I cannot promise too much that we will make it. We have to be conscious of that, myself and the EMC, is what is called the last-minute request. You know, there is a lot of last-minute requests, and maybe sometimes several requests at the same time. I've witnessed some myself. This one, honestly speaking, I didn't need the GSS to know that one. We will do our best, but I need you just to know why we cannot promise. You see, for example, right now, when you look at my 2.0 that I talked about, of course, colleagues in the FODs are going crazier. May not be FMD. I don't know if Ruth is here, she will agree or disagree. But if you look at the treasury side and the risk side, they are really, the demand on them is the same for the ERM. Colleagues that have been involved in the ERM, the enterprise risk management. So those kind of, and when I came back, whatever it was, from the airport, I have to call Alvaro. After 40-minute discussion over the phone, Alvaro said, okay, I need now to look at this, to look at this, to look at this. Automatically, he's going to ask his staff, could we look at this, can we look at that? Those kind of, the reform-related or those new ideas-related requests, sometimes we ourselves, it takes us by surprise. That's my point. Like, 1 week from now, something can come. And what we could do, however, and it came during the EMC retreat, is to minimize the not taking on board new initiatives. This is what came up through the EMC retreat and early in January. I'll give a very concrete example. Next week, I believe on the 13th, those that are involved in Rabobank initiative. I believe there's going to be a meeting in Utrecht, and I just cannot dare asking the staff to make themselves available for that, because of I know currently how much it is on their in terms of the workload and the last-minute initiatives. The last point that listening to you, the Naira, it came to my mind, and I told to the team yesterday, and I didn't know even that came through the GSS. I have always that worry, even myself, way before. And I hope I'm not preaching to the desert here. We need to do something to address what is called fear for retaliation. It's just unacceptable. And I don't know, I feel frustrated that I'm asking myself what I could. I remember last year or a year and a half ago, so many questions were sent to the chair of EXA to ask on behalf of staff, which I still encourage because I prefer to have questions like instead of not having them. But we need to do something that the staff feel that, okay, if I decide to ask a question, there will be no retaliation. If I decide to rebuttal a PES, there's no retaliation. It's only, I was raising that, and then yesterday you told me that you discussed that also, I believe, with your meeting, and et cetera. It's also something that I need also input from you. Over.
Thank you very much, Gilbert. What I would propose is that we take a couple of interventions from colleagues connecting by a video conference, and then we come back to the conference room here. A couple of interventions, and then unfortunately, after we hear from the president, we have to close this portion of the program. So, for those of you on video conference, any comments, questions, ideas that you wish to share, reactions? Let me see hands. Okay, very well. I don't see any requests for the floor, so let's then come back to the Italian conference room. And I see hands. So we have microphones in the room that will come to you if you raise your hand and indicate that you would like to take the floor. Please keep them brief.
Thank you very much. Mr. President, if I can, my name is Fabio Bencivenga. I belong to the Field Support Unit, CST department. I'll try to be very quickly, and if you don't mind, I would like to start from your last statement about retaliation. Can I be direct and frank without taking the risk to be fired? It's unfortunately, yes, the perception is quite different. There is not only a fear, there is concrete evidence of retaliation that could develop through several ways. Retaliation cannot be direct and cannot affect directly the subject of the matter of discussion, can be very subtle. And unfortunately, the perception and even some evidence are working against that. So I really appreciate what you said, and I hope that the control of the direction for senior management on the different departments vis-à-vis this very important issue would be very strong and very effective. Now, as a staff member, going back to everything that's been said so far, as a staff member, I feel that I have two important duties. One is vis-à-vis IFAD, because I'm an IFAD employer. The other one is vis-à-vis the working environment, because I believe strongly that one of our main duties is to try to improve the community we live in. So my feeling during past 10 years is that the working environment really is worsened. And it worsens to such a extent that at least personally, I have no more confidence in anything. I'm sorry, as I told you, I'm quite blunt. For example, the two main areas here in my idea are HR and senior management. HR, for the way I see it, is because it's not performing that watchdog role that I expect to ensure that every policy rule is applied consistently and transparently across the organization. Senior management, because it's not providing that role model the staff expect. I'm not saying that you are not that good. I'm just saying maybe you don't explain to us very well what you're doing, so we don't realize. For example, going back to HR, you say 50 staff has been promoted. I'm very happy about that. Yeah, roundabout. Okay, a large number of staff has been promoted. I'm very happy about that. However, it looks like that you have access to this option. You need to risk that your position has been cancelled. So that's really weird because it is a kind of discrimination the other way around. And personally, I have a different idea of what the promotion board or framework should be rather than that. Then we are trying to do as much as we can, having very little resources. So why we don't pay the due attention, it's always my opinion, why we don't pay the due attention to put the right people in the right place? Because in situations like that, with huge workload, with very poor work-life balance, we need to have very competent people in the different positions. So I welcome when you say, let's fill all the positions that are available. Let's try to put the right people in those positions. Last word, very quickly on PES. There are two main evidence on PES. It is very subjective. Like at school, at university, two different professors may rate the same performance differently. So there is an impossible mistake, a DNA mistake in the past that can be solved. So why don't we turn it into something propositive? No, to assess the performance, to assess what staff needs to perform more. So forget award, forget points, forget numbers. What do you need? Why? You need more training, you need more time off, you need whatever. So it may become something very useful for the organization. Thank you.
Anyone else? Other hands? Other questions? Yeah, I see two. One here and one back there.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. My name is Candida Sansone, and I work in the Office of Strategic Budgeting, OSB. Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'll be very brief. You mentioned in one of your Interact sessions a possible wave 3 with short-term staff. And I was just wondering, the issue of the vacant positions that we have, it's a bit of a chain reaction because of the reassignments at the moment. So we're struggling to have sort of the positions filled so that we can start getting on with our work. And I was wondering what the appetite was to consider also short-term staff being asked to express an interest as part of this, and perhaps following obviously a different process, but this would save time for us because it would mean that we wouldn't have to wait for the reassignment to finish, for vacancies to come out, and for staff to apply.
Thank you. My name is Chitra Deshpande. I'm in the Independent Office of Evaluation, and thank you for the plan that you shared with us, and I think we're all looking forward to hearing more about your visions and plans. I had a question and then a clarification. So the question, if you could just explain more about what this business process review would entail, who would be engaged in that, and the time frame, and what is your expected objective. And then I just wanted to welcome you highlighting in your PowerPoint this mentoring of women. I wanted to highlight that it was already in the Gender Action Plan, and it was for all women, not just young women. And because unfortunately, some of us got old while we were waiting for a promotion. So I hope that it maintains that broader woman focus, because actually we have a glut of women at the P4 level, and it's been great. A lot of women move from P2 to P3 and then P3 to P4, but we're kind of stuck then at P3, P4 level, and you made a lot of wonderful appointments of women in management, but only one was internal, an internal woman. So just to highlight that. Thank you.
Okay, before we close this round of questions, let me see whether any of the colleagues on video conference are having second thoughts. Any interventions from those of you on videocon? Okay, I see no hands. Then Gilbert, I hand back over to you.
Thank you, Cassandra. Let me take I think, Fabio, finally you have more comment and contribution than question. The only thing that I wanted, I want most of you to have I wouldn't say the courage, but the willingness of Fabio to ask questions, whether they seem as sensitive or not. You know, I can disagree with you, but I'll always defend your right to express yourself everywhere. And that one for me is a same principle sacrosanct. It's really something that I believe in. I would really call on you to make sure that during the promotion exercise policy, that you can contribute on that. The point that you, the candidate's question on the short-term staff, I'm tempted to say that for me it's quite a very easy question. If you tell me today to do that, I will do it. The question, let's be verified. The more you do that, the more you go in competition against internal staff. It's mathematic on that. I'm very, very much open. The only thing that I would say maybe is something that extra want to take up. I really want to give that opportunity for the non-staff, whether it's short-term or not, for the non-staff. And we just have an APB, and one of the decisions I was told that is a contractor or former contractor, and I was very happy to hear that. So these type of things that I will turn to the staff yourself, and I'm very ready to consider that positively if you so wish. Then on Chitra's question, I just feel really that I need to correct one thing. When the proposal was, this is a good proposal, as I said, that came from colleagues in divisions, but young in the definition about young professional, mean that few years, those that are starting their career, nothing to do with age, to be for the record on that. But that being said, the question is there. It can be, when I'm saying young, it's, or when you look at that from a professional perspective, what does that mean P1? Does that mean G1? Does that mean D1? I don't know. Together, I believe we need to look at that. And I will have hope that somebody also will ask me the question, what about the young, professionally speaking, the young men on that? So the whole process of mentoring, I believe, is something we just need to consider with a peculiar emphasis on the women because of what the statistic that we get out of that. And the appointment that you mentioned, you have to just to know that is a struggle that we have on that. Not yes, there have been some appointment that clearly I didn't find what it takes internally. I just have to be very clear on that. We can agree or disagree that I also want to change a little bit of the thinking. Yeah, some former directors, they were certainly very experienced, but change resistant is not what I wanted. I really want people with a different set of. So I stand by that. However, my frustration is that when you look at the P4, building up the pipeline, the P3, P4, this is where quietly we are also building up now to really start preparing the P4 and the P5, the P3 to the P5. So hopefully by the end of the year, the result will again be better. The business processes, that I believe the next whatever Interact 2-3 weeks from now will also focus on that. What it is about is not because we have reviewed already the unit, the division, etc. on that. The simple fact is that okay, what do you do and how do you do it from the beginning to the end? Is there a way that you can do it to reduce the volume of work? Simply put, that's what I'm trying to, and even in OPV, believe you me, I want OPV to reduce their workload that I see every day. Okay, what do you do to have a letter signed once the project is approved by the board? What are the steps you do to have the projects, whatever, signed by the president and the member state? And is there a way we can do it differently to reduce the workload? Those are the type of things that we really want to look at. So I am not expecting any impact on kind of what will cause a normal anxiety. So I want to be very clear on that. Ed is here. Is that okay what I said? Any other maybe questions? Yeah.
Okay. We do. Okay. Yes. Sadia is going to be the last question.
I'll be behind Sadia too. Yes, we'll take them. Don't worry. I mean, we'll be a bit faster in the award ceremony, hopefully.
Thank you, Cassandra, and thank you, Mr. President. I have more of a request rather than a comment, and thank you very much for a very engaging and very promising presentation and the ideas that have been incorporated, which are going to be part of the regular process at IFAD. looking at the second wave of reassignment, we see that the divisions concerned that are being involved are not, there is no homogeneity in operations. Like the way we saw in the first wave, it was PMD, very broad-based. You could work with generic job descriptions because one CPM role would be similar to the others, in more or less. In this particular instance, I would only like to request that the job descriptions are not generic. They're specific because each role is different. It is not cross-cutting. It is not applicable. One set of competencies is not applicable to the other role. So this is one request that in this particular wave, we pay due attention to having specific job descriptions and very clear understanding of the role and the qualities and the capabilities that are required to perform. Thank you.
I promise I'll be quick. My name is Tiziana Galloni, and I work in the Treasury Division. Can you hear me? Okay, thanks. So a few points I would like, my proposals. First of all, you mentioned about HRD and how they're already implementing some changes. My wish is that to see in the future an HRD that acts like IFAD does on the ground, considering IFA staff as resource and developing career path. We're not incumbent, we are people, we can have a career path development. So rather than applying the rule to, let's say, define career path as the future HRD, and that could even, let's say, reconsider the current grading, which at the moment I think is very skewed. We have 12 steps between G1 to P5. I think there is a lot of concentration. So either it's not a good scale or it's not well implemented. The second point is on currently there is an exercise on delegation of authority. What I would please ask you also, please, let's implement the authorities. Let's not die by working groups, because I spend a lot of time in working groups. Sometimes it's just a matter of for one person to take a decision and consulting with people rather than creating working groups. And the last one is on your good suggestion for emails. If I may be excluded from the logic of the 7 o'clock, because I work in payments, and if we receive messages from the banks on your payroll after 7 o'clock, I have to respond. So my point on this is it's not a joke. It's not a joke. The point is, if I get an email after 7 o'clock at night, I want the right that whoever sends it is not expecting my response. I want the freedom to be able to respond if it is urgent, if I deem it is necessary to respond. But blocking the emails, to me, is not the solution. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Maybe I will start with that one. Because of time, I didn't want to. First of all, I believe ICT need to look at the feasibility of the idea. And if it's feasible, I will imagine some kind of a button somewhere where you click for yourself to get it download if you so wish, instead of being kind of 100% boxed in that decision. Join the club. The delegation of authority, I believe, when was the deadline to get it done? No, the current, at the IMT, we will have to have a working group and the report back from the working group.
And we're planning to meet with you next week.
Next week.
Or the Monday of the week after.
Yeah, so I believe it will, I'm positive that it will come out close to sign off on the delegation of the authority. And on the HR, first of all, I believe your point is very well taken. I want to be prudent. I don't know how to say that in English. Il ne faut pas vendre la peau de l'ours avant de l'avoir tué. I don't want to overpromise to underdeliver. I believe most of you know me for that. The only thing that I know, HR has been working seriously on that, putting through the HR reform itself is how do you put the talent management at the core on that. So I believe your point is quite very well taken, as well as Sadia's comment in terms of the lesson learned and the job descriptions, and I believe HR is taking note of that in do that. In any case, it's quite very complex. Let's face it. Somebody said that, even the PES review that we talk about, they have a lot of ideas, including that I believe a lot of staff expecting that we get rid of the cap to give the 4 and the 5 rating. Those things are not off the table. They have to be on the table. There's even ideas saying, okay, do we need a rate? I believe this is one of the points that Fabio was making. Do we even need to go for numbers or instead of being qualitative? You need to look at both sides. The only bargaining chip that I really will always put the table, please also help management how to deal with the exceptions, that the underperforming cases, which I know are exceptions. So with that, let me end by a comment that might not be politically correct. I sense, when I was in UNDP, when I was in ILO, I always tell people from budget, HR, that, and sometimes account, saying that if people are not bitching on your behalf, that means you're doing something wrong. Excuse my language. Then in here, particularly in the past, there's been too much on HR, I have to say. To the point where yesterday I told some colleague, after all their staff there, just like you, I just happen, and I mean, if it's a Pierre is a D2, and that we are all at that level, we are paid for that. So, but when you talk about the G1 to the P5 in HR, believe you me that sometime when I have the chance to talk to them on a one-to-one, maybe they have the same criticism that you do. Maybe they are frustrated also that they want to move faster. But because the confidentiality of handling HR management, there are a lot of things that they don't necessarily cannot, and I hope they don't in private getting out sometimes. So just put a little bit of caveat on that. I heard that in the past 2 weeks, that, and including senior managers. Senior managers are also frustrated sometimes by HR on that, particularly when we have the post that we cannot advertise. And I can even give you example that right now I have posts when they are being asked to go outside, and they are ready to do it. Then I'm telling them, no, we have to wait, because there are other cases where I know mathematically some posts are being cut, and therefore the staff will be technically out of post, and I took the commitment that nobody's going to lose the job. So if I authorize you to go outside, I have one post left to deal with that. So today, they will pay the price because they are maybe slow on that. What you don't know is what maybe the president told the director of HR and who gave them instruction. I'm just saying that please don't stop putting the pressure on them, because myself, I'm putting pressure on HR. I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't put pressure, we shouldn't kind of, the only thing that I'm saying, keep a 10-15%, like, tout ce qui brille n'est pas nécessairement de l'or. So put things into perspective. Voilà.
Thank you very much, Gilbert.